Howdy, I'm Kate Kavanaugh, and you're listening to the Mind, Body, and Soil podcast, where we're laying the groundwork for our land, ourselves, and for generations to come by looking at the way every thread of life is connected to one another. Communities above ground mirror the communities below the soil, which mirror the vast community of the cosmos. As the saying goes, as above, so below. Join me as we take a curious journey into agriculture, biology, history, spirituality, health, and so much more. I can't wait to unearth all of these incredible topics alongside you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Groundwork podcast, which is on a slow and I think increasingly painful transition from the Mind, Body, and Soil podcast. I want to thank you. I know it has been a couple of weeks since our last episode, and I was just in the midst of being a human running a farm in the middle of summer with other human pieces. I've been musing a lot on what consistency means in the modern age and our expectation of it. And so thank you for bearing with me. Once again, this week, I'm trying out something a little bit new, and I have written my intro for this episode. And so we're going to continue to give this a shot. And mostly, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the acceptance of my humanity. And I just love this group of humans that listen to this podcast. And so I just want to say that I see you and I appreciate you. And let's dive in. So I started this out by saying our drive to create art is a big part of what makes us human. It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. I feel as though in these explorations, I'm holding these two poles. I want to go back again to this quote that, honestly, at this point, I wish I would stop using as a touchstone, but here we are. I think in our explorations in this podcast, it would be easy to find ourselves in tumult, adrift in the sea of infrastructure and how our world was made. And so having this quote as an anchor is really vital to me. The ultimate hidden truth of our world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently. It has been my anchor as we've explored supply chains, infrastructure, policy, geopolitics, and all of these externalities of how we got where we are and the underpinnings of the world that we've made. But it's also been my impetus for how we might explore what it means to remake our world. And I don't want to lose that piece of it. I think I myself have been adrift in, honestly, many, many different ways. But I've also been a little bit adrift in this exploration of looking at the unseen, of trying to see the waters that we swim in. It can kind of paint a very bleak picture. It can also give rise to a lot of feelings of, does anything we do matter when this is our world? And I think that one of the antidotes to that is art. Art and also community, also love, as cheesy as it may sound. And it's art to me that expresses that and that begins to reveal that. It's about the work of hands, and it's also about working with our hands, which is something that we've come back to on this podcast, what it means to work with our hands, whether we are farming or making art or manufacturing something. It's art for all the many faceted reasons we create it, at the heart of which I think is honestly a good deal of mystery and something that I want to continue to be a part of that mysterious unknown. It comes in so many shapes and sizes, whether that's from an obvious act of resistance to a deep act of connection, or whether it's just something inside of us that's undefined that just compels us to create. I have, rather reluctantly, come to view this podcast as a bit of my art, to call it art, strange as though it feels to say that. But there is this deep rumble inside of me, inside of my bones, this weight that compels me. I feel that I must weave these ideas together. And I think it comes from that same undefinable and mysterious space of art. And this is a space I want to make sure we celebrate. I chose my guest today for more reasons than I can count. Mariele Ivy is an artist to her core, a human I've known and orbited for many years. She has a lot to say on the creative act, but she is also putting a lot into action around how she considers supply chains in that creative act with her business Young in the Mountains. She's a jeweler, but she works to ensure that she is working with American miners. She's trying to build a supply chain of gold recycled from electronics. She thinks about what's powering her shop and how she can build a better business. She's an entrepreneur as much as an artist, a leader as much as she is a jeweler, a mother as much as she is a lapidarist. I think with her art, she's touching earth quite literally, but she is also touching celebration and touching hands in the actual putting on of her jewelry, as well as touching the hands that bring all of these materials to her, as much as she's creating something truly beautiful. She's also playing with time and place, juxtaposing our relatively short time here on Earth, the preciousness of the moments we spend here, with bits of the Earth that are so old as to be almost unfathomable. I really admire every facet of the work that Mariele does. Though we didn't talk about the work of photographer Sebastião Salgado in this episode, whose photographs of the Serra Pelada gold mine in Brazil have become a picture for what it means to me when we talk about outsourcing to the unseen. A quote of his has sat on my desk as I considered Marielle's work and my own. He says, I believe that the average person can help a lot, not by giving material goods, but by participating, by being part of the discussion. And I love this because I think whether we are talking about creativity, community, supply chains, agriculture, or even our own fears of the dark and the depths of our inner worlds, something Mariele and I talk about in this episode, we are participating in the questions that get at the core of something and bring us together. I left this interview with Mariele with so many nuggets of wisdom. Hands are our most precious tools, she says. Inspiration must find you working, Mariele reminds us in the words of her father. And we are not distracted by pretty things with disastrous pasts. At the heart, I think Marielle's work and her beingness is a reminder that beauty is a form of reciprocity. And without further ado, and with my conversation with Mariele, I would like to remind us of just that. Before we get to the interview, I want to thank our generous and deeply aligned sponsors, Redmond Real Salt and Sundries Farm Garlic. These are incredible humans who are supporting the work of this podcast, and your purchases through them support both the podcast and these two amazing businesses who are doing things right. Salt, mined right here in America in a way that deeply supports its community, and garlic grown to the most incredible standards for your seed and culinary needs. Now for the interview with Mariele.
I do love talking. Once I get talking, it's hard for me to stop.
One of the things about this is I keep thinking, so this is, I think I've recorded almost 100 episodes.
Wow.
And every turn on the microphone, I get nervous and I keep wondering if that's going to go away. And so I think that there's something about sharing story and talking that, a little bit of like good anxiety that fuels something.
I was just talking right now to Hannah about how like last night I got scared of the dark and I got this like huge cortisol rush through my whole body. And I was laughing because in my mind, I'm still scared of like a werewolf in the woods, even though I'm like, I know that they're not real. And I was laughing. I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to be like 80 and it's still going to be a werewolf. That's the thing I'm scared of. Or if at a certain point you like come to that calmness in the dark where you know that like nothing can hurt you. But I still feel like a child in the dark where everything is out there waiting to get me. And I was just walking from my garage to my house. It was like 15 feet. And then I was thinking, or we were just talking about it. I'm like, maybe it's just part of how we've evolved. Is like, you're never not going to have the cortisol in the dark because that's how we stayed alive for the last like however many thousands of years
Yeah.
is that we always feel like something might get us in the dark.
Yeah, that it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
So every time if I get up to pee in the middle of the night, there's a hallway between my bedroom and my bathroom, and I always feel like I have this cortisol spike, and I'll sort of run to the bedroom, and I have to
Yeah.
hop on the bed
Yeah.
so nothing can get my feet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm in my 30s and this is
Yeah.
still going on. But I was thinking about this as I was watching the goats had babies. And I watched their instinct to hide under things, like to be undercover, to be
Yeah.
protected from aerial predators. And I think so much is just baked into our
Yeah.
biology that we can't transcend it.
And thinking that one day you might conquer it or escape it is just like a setup for failure.
Yeah.
Because it's you against like whatever 60,000 years of evolution.
Yeah.
Like you're always going to look behind your back in the dark.
Yeah. And modern times our bodies don't know that we can turn on a light switch and that we're inside of a house or that we're, encased in a neighborhood that is safer than we've been for 99% of human history.
Yeah.
Can't tell our ancient hardware those things.
No, that's something actually that's really got me intrigued these days. And I was just like scrubbing the internet just this morning, actually looking because I want to start another Audible book. Something about like, I guess my Google search terms were like paleo living, but not recipes.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the eating, I don't need to follow recipes, but I read a book about paleo parenting. It was called Hunt, Gather, Parent. And it was so interesting to me. And I had those thoughts forever. And then to find someone wrote a book about it, it was great. And I'm like, I just want to know more now because I have 2 kids and I've already read that book. And I was just like, I feel like when I'm able to give a lot of forgiveness in my day-to-day life when I remember how ancient our bodies are. And how we are stuck in a very modern world with a lot of modern expectations. And this is applicable to like my 4-year-old son not wanting to go to school or like I don't know, anything that might be irking me about what my husband is doing. It's like, oh, well, we're actually supposed to be like picking berries and chasing rabbits and being outside, and traffic and school are just not what we have been designed for. And it helps me forgive a lot of people, strangers and my family, for these situations where we do and say things that are harder. I'm like, oh, well, this is just like not what we were bred for.
Yeah.
It's not what we're here, not bred for, but this is not what we have. We're not evolved to be doing these things.
Yeah, there's a biological mismatch. And I love the idea of bringing forgiveness into it. I don't think I've ever thought about that way. And I think that's going to give me permission to forgive myself too for those times when sitting in front of the computer all day isn't doing what I need it to do inside of my brain.
But in the first place, I think sometimes I go is that I've just failed.
Yeah.
To succeed in this scenario. And then if I remind myself, well, like I'd really, really win at looking for mushrooms and talking to my girlfriends all day. Like that's what I should be doing right now. Like that I could win at that. But yeah, like answering 40 emails, that's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. And we have to hold some forgiveness for ourselves. I'll noodle on books too. I know you read Eve.
You have paused. I don't know.
Did I pause?
I don't know.
Am I back?
Just for a quick moment. Yep, you're back.
It records continuously, so it should keep it. That's why I like this program. It records independently. I know you read Eve by Kat Bohannon, and I think that's a good one for sort of that lens on our biology. I was trying to think of others you might enjoy. My friend Bill wrote a book called Eat Like a Human, but it's about the history. There are a couple of recipes in there, but it's more about the history of how we interacted with foods through the lens of technology. And he talks about using earth to mitigate the toxins in potatoes, sort of making like a dip out of clay. And he went all over the world with his family, eating insects and exploring ancient cheese making methods. And it's super fun. And he's a fun dude. But there's a great book about fire. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship with fire and how much it informed.
Is it cooked?
No,
the Michael Pollan book. I haven't read that
to pull
one
it up. That's a good one too.
Yeah, I like his writing a lot, and what you just described sounds like I read a lot about food as well. Like like in my nonfiction stuff, it's not like the main topic, but it wildly interests me.
Yeah.
And that would totally fulfill my Google search of paleo living, not recipes.
Yeah.
It sounds like the book you just described.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think you'd really like it. I'll send you a link to it when we close up, because I think it is. I think we're just, I don't know. I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about you all morning, which was really delightful to just sort of noodle on your work. And I was thinking about what it is in humans that drives us to adorn ourselves with earth. And I was thinking about leather, and I was thinking about stone, and I was thinking about metal, and this act of wanting to be decorated, and sort of where that came from a sort of ancestral viewpoint. I hope you're enjoying this interview with Mariele Ivy. I loved getting to talk to Mariele about her philosophy of sourcing stones mined right here in America. Today's sponsor, Redmond Real Salt, is also mined here in America from a vein of salt formed from the ancient Sundance Sea in Utah during the Jurassic period. This salt, insulated from modern pollutants, is unlike any salt you've tasted. It's rich, earthy, with just a hint of sweetness, and this depth of flavor comes from the over 60 trace minerals in the salt itself. And for over 60 years, the team at Redmond has mined this salt in America, helping to support a rural community in Utah. It's that kind of commitment to business practices that makes this salt taste even better. Redmond is my answer to everything. Little crocks of it are spread through my house, and I use it in these late summer months as my go-to salt for pickling, canning, and preserving. I also love and use their awesome electrolyte powder, Relight, to keep me going on these hot summer days. Lately, I've been blending it with ice and pouring sparkling water over it to make a very refreshing, salty slushy. You can find the recipe on my Instagram. I love the pina colada flavor for this. It's so refreshing. You can grab table salt, seasonings, smoked salt, and really delicious electrolyte powder and all kinds of salty goodies from Redmond Real Salt and get 15% off by using the code MindBodySoil_15 for 15% off Redmond Real Salt products by going to redmond.life. Again, you can get 15% off using the code MindBodySoil_15 for 15% off when you go to redmond.life or hit the link in the show notes. Let's get back to the interview.
I don't know, like my lizard brain probably, but funny on this topic, one of my very first business cards that I ever had made when it was before my business was Young in the Mountains, it was more just like me as like a solo artist identity. My like little business tagline was "Make nature jealous."
I love that.
Which I think is what you just described, like this like weird desire to decorate ourselves in nature and like be part of nature, but also like this competition to be more beautiful, or like that's how I was taking it at the time when I was using lots of really natural materials. Like you would have loved it. We should have been friends, and we should have been friends 15 years ago because you could have sent me all the weird like goat teeth and bones that are just like the byproduct of farming. I had other friends that were sending me stuff like that. Actually, they had a goat farm. Yeah. And so I would like I still have boxes of jawbones like squirreled away from like when I was making art out of weird bones and shark teeth, and it was very animal centric.
Yeah.
Because the weirder the better when you're 20.
Yeah. It reminds me there was this thrift store in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, when I lived in Arizona, called Brand New Dead Things. And
Brand New Dead Things.
And that felt like it would have been right up both of our alleys.
Oh yeah, I would have pulled over for that.
Yeah. I was thinking about you this morning, and I was thinking about, we had this beautiful conversation that sort of led into this conversation that we're having right now. And I was thinking about you in process, and I was going back over my notes about you as a child. And I was wondering, because you talked about burying dead birds and then digging them up later to look at the bones. And I was thinking about your work with dinosaur bones and in lapidary with all of these different stones. And I had this idea that part of your artistic process is observing the processes of Earth itself.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
finding a way to frame those and make those tangible. And so I wanted to kind of kick that to you.
It really is. Now that, like, when you say it like that, it certainly is. Like, yeah, like I think it, how could I not be curious about what I'm touching? And that is what got us here talking about being on a podcast, because you were interested in supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're conscious, if you're thinking while something is in your hand, like the first place I maybe everyone's mind, or maybe it's just me, but I'm always thinking where and like what and how, like, and it's always sparked by something visually interesting to me, and then my mind wanders from there. And so what you said about, like you said, like, dinosaur bone, that's my favorite thing to meditate on in terms of like when I'm cutting it and dealing with it, is that, like, how trying to grasp that time span.
Mm-hmm.
I think they went extinct 65 million years ago. So that's not even as old as they are. That's just when they went extinct. So it's such a deep scale of time that it always, my sales pitch on dinosaur bone is that it'll like kind of reorientate your commute when you like see the dino bone on your hand when you're holding onto the steering wheel. And the Rockies game cost you 20 extra minutes on your commute and you're pissed, but you're like, whoa, my life is so short compared to a dinosaur bone. Like it just is an instant reset to me anytime I think about the scale of time.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm prepping this podcast with this geologist. Her name is Marcia Bjornared, and she wrote this beautiful book about geology called Timefulness. And I pulled this little quote because I was thinking about that aspect of dinosaur bones, which you had mentioned, and the sort of meditative aspect that they can inspire. And so I thought I'd kick this one to you, which is, fathoming deep time is arguably geology's single greatest contribution to humanity. Just as the microscope and telescope extended our vision into spatial realms once too minuscule or too immense for us to see, geology provides a lens through which we can witness time in a way that transcends the limits of our human experience.
Yeah. Wow. That's very beautiful and so true.
Yeah. It is. And I was thinking about that. I think especially sort of simultaneously preparing your interview and this interview with Marcia, I ended up thinking a lot about that geological process, and to be able to sort of hold it, to touch it, to wear it on your body, and to see time made tangible, right? Mm-hmm. Which is all a diamond or a piece of stone or a piece of dinosaur bone is, in a lot of ways, is this tangible talisman of time. That was a lot of tease. I didn't mean to do that, actually.
Yeah, that would be good on a business card too.
little tagline for you.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I don't know how else we would, as non-geologists, like your interaction with those thoughts on time. What else could they be triggered by? In a way, everything that happens to us on the daily is so, I don't know, kids growing up is it messes with time more than anything else I've ever experienced is having kids. Like, time gets very weird, stretches out and it shortens up, and it's definitely a trip. But yeah, putting these ancient rocks and diamonds on your body really does ask you to say the word, like when I'm talking about diamonds, genuine diamonds versus lab diamonds, I get a lot into talking about time, because it's interesting what lab diamonds are doing in jewelry, because they're able to replicate a process that took billions of years in, I don't know, hours or days. And it's fascinating, and it's incredible what humans have been able to do. But I still, when I'm valuing something, I still think that process is the most important part to me, is how long it took someone to do something. I've always admired art that was like, I love photorealism in visual art because I understand the intricacy of the time needed to be photorealistic versus, I don't know, just cool like light installations where I'm like, all right, like you had the idea, yeah, but your hands, how many hours were your hands working is always been part of what I value in regards to things.
I mean, it's interesting because what you said at the beginning of this is it's those things that our touch is what opens up these portals of curiosity into looking at deep time or looking at where something came from. And another thing that you said that I love are hands are our most precious tools.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you're speaking, you so often come back to your hands, you come back to hands in general, but also this aspect of touch opening up what's possible for us, that we are tactile beings.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a rule at Young in the Mountains, and I've had it for a long time, maybe even before like I was operating under like this like company name, just being at whatever street fairs or anything. Like you'd be surprised how many people walk up and the first thing they do is talk about how fat their hands are or how big their knuckles are, and they're like apologizing to me how their nails look. It's every other person comes up and apologizes about their hands. And I always just thought, like, my hands would be like bloody and have epoxy under the fingernails and tired from creating. And these women with beautiful hands would come up and just try to find something wrong with their hands. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't hear it. You talk shit about your hands, everything costs double. And we say that like weekly here in the store when anyone tries to tell us like, oh, sorry, I didn't get my nails done. I'm like, no, don't want to hear it. Like, stop right now. You don't need to go there for whatever cultural reason we think we do. It's like, don't talk bad about hands in front of me. It hurts my heart.
Yeah. I mean, they are like, these are our tools. This is what we touch the world with. And oftentimes the first place that we really as humans anyway interact with the world, maybe for a shark, that's their mouth. Maybe for other animals, that's tongue, their nose. Maybe. Yeah. Nose, but for us, that first reach, that first touch, and all of those nerve endings are focused in the pads of our fingers. And that's where we, I think, see the world through a different way. Like touch is to see, and to touch is to become curious. I want to take a moment to take us over from one incredible jeweler to another. Jillian Lakuski and her husband Rob Kropfel hand farm garlic in the volcanic soils of Idaho at Sundry's Farm. Perched above the Snake River, this is garlic unlike anything you've experienced before, whether you're looking for seed or culinary-grade garlic. For more than 8 years, this garlic has been hand-grown without herbicides or pesticides and is certified white rot-free by the state of Idaho. And it has been selected for big, easy-peeling cloves. Why do all these things matter, you might ask? Well, I love big cloves in the kitchen, so I'm not constantly peeling. And I love big cloves for the garden, for growing more big, meaty cloves for my kitchen that I don't have to peel as much. Not to mention their amazing practices, like applications of fish emulsion and blood meal, means I can rest easy, knowing that the utmost of care has been given to the growing methods at Sundry's Farm. But wait. There's more. This is the most flavorful garlic. I don't know if it's the joyful hands that grow it, those mineral-rich volcanic soils out there in Idaho, or the hard and soft-neck varietals like Nootka Rose, Enchilium Red, Lourdes Italian, Music, and so many more. Check out Sundry's Farm Garlic for all your winter pantry garlic and seed needs by going to sundrysfarm.com. That's SUNDRIES farm.com to pre-order seed and culinary garlic for the year with shipping beginning in September. There's no code necessary. Just head over to sundrysfarm.com. And now back to our interview with Mariele.
I agree. One of the things that scares me a lot is hand pain and arthritis. And when I see older people's hands and I imagine mine changing in the same way, it's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
And I had some hand pain because of some ceramics that I used to make and the technique I used. And I was able to, change the way I held the tool, and I hold a pen differently now. And I use like CBD on my knuckles and my joints. But just thinking about how my hands are going to change is like I don't know, it's like an aging conversation, but it's like hyper specific because like no one's going to care what my hands look like. It's not like a conversation about like wrinkles or like our face, like our beauty in a way.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about like, what will I be able to do?
Yeah. But to me, I think that's the more salient point of conversation. Like how my face looks doesn't affect the way that I interact with the world.
I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't.
But I do see a lot of, I see things become real through my hands.
Say more about that. You see things become real through your hands. You bring things into this world, right?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the things that in my life story that's important is that I come from a line of crafts people. So I think the steady hand is something I inherited. I didn't have to train, in a way to have the like mental thought flow through into my hand. It just always did that. And I see the struggle of even like my husband with his handwriting. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I see that I always like looking at people's handwriting because I think you can see a lot of their hand-eye control in handwriting, and you'll get, strangers' handwriting, people I think you can just tell a lot about what this really specific thing that I'm good at, which is like with a pen or with a paintbrush or whatever, like I can draw exactly the shape or the line that I have in my mind. Not necessarily like I'm a good illustrator, but if you needed me to draw like a 2 millimeter line or a perfect circle, like those things I've been able to do my whole life. So then just figuring out what I want to hold in my hand and what I want to make, I had the hand-eye coordination naturally to do those things, which if you're not born with it, I guess you have different skills,
Yeah.
I don't have a very good voice. Like not something like people in my family, they're like not big singers, but I know I have friends who just could sing like so beautifully without even trying. That's not me, but I have the hand-eye control. So yeah, I don't know, like being able to have an idea and then use my hands to bring it to fruition is my superpower. I tend not to sketch either. Like I don't draw or practice anything before I make. I just feel it. It happens. There's no sketchbooks or notepads or, magic pencil, iPad drawings of anything I've ever wanted to make. It always just happened.
Does it happen through feel? I know that we have voice noted a little bit about something that your dad said recently. And I was thinking about this because I was thinking a lot about your creative process. And your dad said recently, inspiration must find you working.
Yeah.
And
oh, yeah.
I was thinking about you saying that you surround yourself by, instead of researching, which you do also, but what it is to be surrounded by materials and then to just sort of midwife something into this world with your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very chaotic practice, I think, because, and I've often like had moments where I've said, I wish I was just a creative writer. Like I would just need a pen. I just need a computer. But my whole life I've been like a hoarder. Now I'm like really dedicated to like minimalism, but not when it comes to art and my supplies and my color palettes and my things. Like now they're more organized in little drawers and cabinets, but I think like just having a vast collection of, in my world now, it's rocks or gemstones. I just sort of need it out in front of me and I'll find it when I need it. And I do have a good catalog of where things are. Like I just remember color and pattern, and I can go find a specific little bit of stone out of a pile of like 80. I just happened this week, someone wanted something black and white and green. And I was like, all right, I know where that little 5 millimeter piece of black and white that will be perfect for this ring is. And I just went and kind of dug around in the pile and I was like, bingo, had it. I don't know how many months ago I saw that thing, but I like kind of cataloged it away in my mind visually of like, that's pretty. I don't need it now, but you'll need it one day. And it is going to be a beautiful ring for a client this week. So I have a good like visual catalog of all the stuff I've ever hoarded.
Do you see it in your mind first? Do you see the piece in your mind, or do you see the piece as you
Um,
feel through the making of it? I don't know if that question makes sense. Let me know if it does.
no, I get it. Like in this scenario I'm just describing, like I had a direction of black and white plus green, and I picked up the exact stones I wanted first. Like there wasn't like 6 mock-ups that I was like, this black and this, this black and white plus this green, or this black and white plus this green. I just was like, done, these two.
Yeah.
Felt good, I didn't pick it up if it didn't feel good. So whether or not the client chooses it and then is offered a second round, like I don't know that all, like that's sort of how I'm learning to work with clients on more specifically creative projects with them, with their input. But yeah, in that scenario, like I picked those 2 stones up. They were the only ones I touched, and I just knew that those were the ones that I would choose if I was them.
What about the shape
But I'm
of
learning
the
a lot
piece?
about how to bring in someone else into my creative process whose opinion matters.
Yeah.
That's kind of like new territory for me in jewelry.
Yeah. I love that. What about the shape of the piece? Like, what about how it's gonna take form? Do you see that ahead of time, or is it just kind of
Yeah, I think you.
informed?
Sorry, say that one more time.
No, you're fine. I was wondering about the
Can you say
shape
that
of the
again?
piece. If that is something that you see before, or if it's something that's formed in the making of it, g- where it goes and what it
Um,
looks like, whether
yeah, as I've been getting like into more combining like fine jewelry and kind of like my creativity off the leash. I think it's always inspired by some sort of piece I find where I can't categorize it into an existing style, because as a professional artist, there are products, like we reproduce different styles. And if I find something beautiful, but it doesn't sort of plug into like the traditional shape I need, that's the beginning of like I know I need to have it, like it's like a love connection immediately with some sort of like color or the pattern present, but then it doesn't fit into a category that I'm able to like replicate it, a traditional like Young in the Mountain style. I think that's when it sort of becomes the little seed of something in the future,
yeah,
and I might not touch it again for a long time, or I'll process it into like a gold piece, but then not match it up with the inlay for a while later. I've been noticing that I have been working on things for months and months and months and months, and I just won't touch it if it doesn't feel right. Like I can tell it's not its time
yeah,
because there's no client involved, so there is no deadline, which is really neat because I don't have to serve it up to anybody particular, and there's no particular deadline. So I'm able to take my time and not force it, and that feels really good but weird, I'd say.
yeah,
It's unfamiliar territory to me to just be like sitting on something amazing that I know people are going to love and I'm going to love, but if I don't feel like sharing it yet, I don't have to. That's a new place I'm at right now.
yeah. We had voice noted a little bit, and you had said something about creation for the sake of creation without it having
Mm-hmm.
to be a product, without it having to
Yeah.
be in the eyes of someone else as the end goal, and for it to just be a testament to what wants to come into the world and in your own creative process.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to find it in 2 different places right now. Like, because I have made my profession, or sorry, I've made my passion my profession, I can't, I don't know, I can't sterilize it to death
Mm,
or it wouldn't exist, and then it wouldn't feed me. It wouldn't provide for my family. So there like has to be a creativity inside of the business that's protected. But then I also live my own like creative life, like after work hours, where I'm a wildly creative person as well. And my whole life has been this like tug of war between like coming up with nice creative ideas, but then being like, well, why don't I sell it? Like, why not? You know, I'm a professional artist. Like, it's beautiful. Like, yeah, let's exchange this for money so that I can do more art. But then I've noticed that tends to like hijack it hijacks the process, because I'll immediately start thinking about what the client would like, how likely this would be to move, you know. And I'm not talking about jewelry. It's even like I've had ceramic collections, and I've done, I really like to sew on my free time. And inevitably I end up thinking about how I can sell it. It's just like it's definitely my like family heritage to sell what we make, like sell our craftsmanship. So I've got that bug, and I'm good at it, and I like sales. But as a way to like rebel against my family as an adult, I'm like, what if I don't know, the other week I took watercolors to the park with my son, and I made some, like, in my opinion, pretty horrible landscapes. But the whole time was sitting there reminding myself, like, who cares? Like, literally the goal is not to show anybody. You just need to be in this like cathartic outdoor moment where you're playing with color and thinking about what pencil would represent those red rocks, and like being more aware of the moment choices. Like I was just describing, like, what pencil am I going to pick up to capture that pine tree? That was the whole goal. And the next biggest, hardest part was like, tear up that paper, or like let it fall into the back of your notebook, put it in the metaphorical like creek, and just watch it float away, because it's no longer needed. As soon as I was having those meditations on the different colors, like that was the win, that was the goal. And that's new for me in my creative process, but it felt really good. But I can't help but like admit on air that like my art was bad. Like I still have an opinion about what I created. Like I can't separate myself from it, but it was like a wildly successful moment without a product at the end. And that was like a big win of my month.
I was thinking about when you were talking about this, because I love this. And I think that sometimes the act of being creative for ourselves and ourselves alone with no witness, right? It's sort of that, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it type of situation. But I was thinking about what it meant to, you know, hearkening back to the beginning of this conversation and thinking about parenting prior to agriculture and monetary system, what creating might have looked like prior to monetary system, what that process is. If, you know, we're so, and this comes back up a lot on the podcast, we're so sort of trapped in the inner workings of whatever you want to call it, late stage capitalism, from that we have to function in this world and we have to support ourselves and our families. But if we're able to decouple from that momentarily, like what is that act, the way in which that has fundamentally changed the act of creating? My internet is being sticky. Are you there? My internet just...
I don't know if you can hear me right now or not, but you've been frozen for several moments.
Well, let's see here. More clip. Are you there? That was my internet.
I'm here now.
Okay. I think that was my internet. That was a little stickiness on my end.
Okay. I usually don't have internet problems because we're like right here on middle of Denver or whatever. But that was a really good question. I heard, I think like the first half, and I can answer that. But I think that is the most fun thing to think about ever, is like what we would have done in our like kind of past lives, or like I'm interested in ancient art. I actually have like a cave painting tattoo on my arm. And I think that what we were doing all in those first sort of like charcoal marks on a wall, we were storytelling.
Yeah. Yes.
We were just sharing with other people, and there didn't need to be money involved. There was no, nothing there except altruism. Like I might want to tell my uncle where to find the buffalo or whatever. It was to help people. It was to tell stories about danger, about whatever poison berries, things we've learned that other people should know. And we did that with art.
And about beauty, I think, too. I think it was also just about, I don't know, maybe awe or a sense of wanting to understand ourselves through the lens of something else. Like when I think about the paintings at Lascaux and
Yeah.
the aliveness in those bison as a reflection of our own aliveness.
This is not like the exact version of those buffalo, but it's like that's what it is to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know that you had that.
Yeah, it's like really, really old, but it's the cave painting, and I've always been fascinated about that. I think we wanted to be remembered, or just like curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think we're just like so deeply curious as humans? Like, you found something that will make a mark. Like, okay, well, what kind of mark should I make? Like, I think our human mind is gonna see what happens next. It's like I see it in my kids. What's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen next? Like, we're trying everything we possibly can to see what we can get away with, or what kind of mark it will make on a wall.
I love that. I love the idea of making a mark. Is something left behind, right? I think
jewelry is really important for that reason, because of the materials that I'm using, especially in this fine jewelry realm. The diamonds are already billions of years old. They're not going anywhere. The gold is so ancient. It's not going anywhere. Everything I'm just like kind of like a combining. It's new, but it is going to outlast us all. And that feels really neat. Like, I think that's probably why I landed on jewelry as the kind of like the medium of my life, because everything else I've touched, like as I've been intrigued with fiber and sewing and wood and kind of more like the animal bone weird jewelry, it didn't really have the same staying power. And I think that's why it's fine. Like, you get to these fine materials after you have dabbled a lot in less expensive materials, because what I do now with these ancient and expensive materials, it will be here forever.
Yeah.
And imagine if all my like 19-year-old projects were here forever, like I don't think that you would take as much care, and you're not supposed to take care when you're young and you're creative. You're just supposed to see whatever the mark will look like on the wall. What will this do? What will that do? Now in fine jewelry, it takes a lot more thought, because of how expensive everything is, and because of the staying power and all the associations that we put into fine jewelry, like commitment, birth ceremony, etc. Like, it's heavy for lots of reasons.
Yeah, there's this incredible tension. I mean, even through some of the things you've said in this conversation, between our own transience of our own bodies and this minute time that we're here on Earth, and these materials that last millions of years, and there's a lot of tension in that space.
Yeah, we're so little to be playing with them, like that. The Men in Black scene at the very end, where all the aliens are playing with the marbles, but like, the marbles are our planet. Like, that is just the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like that, and seeing it as a kid too. I mean, I don't know what year Men in Black came out, but that.
Oh, I remember that scene. Like, I have a core memory associated with that scene.
Everyone does, right? Like, raise your hand if you don't vividly remember that scene, because I think it put us in our place, like, so well, in a way. Like, it's that scale of vastness and mystery, but in something really digestible, like the last 2 minutes of Men in Black. Like,
very poignant.
Yes.
I love that you brought that up, because I can close my eyes and I can see that entire scene play out. And I think that as humans, there's something about us that must want to explore that relationship to us in scale. And I think that even cave paintings of these massive herds of bison is looking at us in scale, or picking up a rock and learning how to flake it so that we can harvest our food is a part of looking at us in scale, or looking at the stars and feeling a sense of smallness. You said that word, small. that it gives us a different sense of place.
I like feeling that way. I like feeling small.
I do too.
I feel like it makes me calmer and more introspective and more grateful. And anything to, I don't know, like wind down, I think is calming. And I tend to gravitate towards people who also are grounded and, I don't know, just kind of more aware of our, I don't know, like how little we matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. It's weird being a parent with this sort of like thought in my mind where like the kids, like how we parent does matter the most out of anything we could possibly do with our kids. But at the same time, I often want to tell my son, like, look, you don't even like, you're just like, I don't know, you're stardust. It really doesn't matter. But he's so little, like the tiniest things matter.
Yeah.
But you have to like talk through it, and you can't tell a kid that like they don't matter in the great scheme of things. Like you can't say that to a 4-year-old, but I think you can start to show them that through nature, or like, I don't know. My kids are young, so I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Like, how do you tell them they matter, but at the same time, like they don't?
Yeah. They're a part of something else. I mean, I think one of the things that and don't let me tell you what you're saying, but I think one of the things that I enjoy the most out of being a part of nature is that when I am connected into an interconnected web of life, I suddenly matter and don't matter. That I am affecting things around me, but that I am a part of something that is so much bigger than me, that my presence it's not required, it's not necessary, it's not. And so I matter, but I'm so small. And I think that really changes something about my own psychology.
And how you care for others in the world. Like how you move through the world, knowing, like having that self-realization of like how you're involved. I think that makes kind people.
Yeah.
It's been neat talking to my son who's 4 about the food chain, because he's like very into animals, and it's neat trying to talk about like who's at the top. He's obsessed with saying, I'm an apex predator. And I'm like, yeah, you are, but you're still smaller than a bear. Like there is the top of the food chain, but then there's still just like you as a human who weighs nothing compared to a bear. We live in the woods, so there's a lot of like bear and mountain lion talk. And I think it's like, I'm really grateful to be able to live in the woods and like use these natural moments to sort of rein him in.
Yeah.
As the apex predator he is.
To give him some perspective.
Like, you only weigh 40 pounds. Like,
yeah, there's something bigger than you out there. And I think
I think it's good to know.
It is good to know. And I don't think we grow up with that very much anymore. We grow up being the biggest, scariest thing in our spaces when we're sort of cloistered in suburbs or in urban areas.
And the goal is always to get bigger, to get more, to get more power, to get more things.
Yes.
But when you grow up in the woods, you have to look behind your back at night because there could be a bear or mountain lion. Like we were talking at the very beginning, like that innate fear of like, what's behind me? When you grow up in the woods, like there actually could be something behind you. And like you see evidence of it all around. I grew up in western Montana next to like a kind of a river system. And there was bear poop outside all the time. Like our dog got attacked by a mountain lion. Like there was all these really real things that like I think are with me still as an adult. Like I live in the woods again, so there are bears and mountain lions. But like even when I lived in the city, I think I was still like, oh man, like like walk fast at night, like get back inside. There's things bigger than you out there. And it was a nice sort of recalibration about like what really matters. It's not getting more things or more power. It's like, let's stay alive.
Yeah. It's funny. I just finished an interview with John Valiant, who we did a whole sweeping interview of all 4 books that he's written. But one of the books that he wrote is called The Tiger. And in it, he explores the Amur tiger in eastern Siberia, sort of on the border with Korea, and the series of interactions that happen between this tiger and the people that share space with this small band of tigers. And he talks a lot about that innate feeling of fear, and that a tiger will see you 100 times before you see it. And to put into perspective, like, what I really took away from it was what it means to share this earth. We share this earth with other humans, with other creatures, with other animals, all of which are operating on this ancient biology where we can feel that, and we still have that tension with the dark and with the unknown. And it does make you reconsider something that you said that I love, which is about kindness, right? About how we can be kind to this space and how we can exist as a force of kindness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think that this is kind of a good segue, because I want to talk about all the things, but one thing I do want to talk about are supply chains. And I actually think that something that you do really, and one of the many things you do so incredibly, is consider kindness and your place on the earth when you are sourcing things. And, for listeners, they'll know that we've talked a lot about supply chains. And one of the things I wanted to do is to remember that supply chains they're not just about food, and they're not just about electricity, but they're also about beauty and about the things we touch in our everyday life. And I think that you
Mm-hmm.
exemplify this in the way that you source materials for the jewelry that you make. And you said something that I wonder if we might use as an anchor, because I wrote this on a Post-it note and I put it in my office. I thought it was so important. And you say on your website that we are not distracted by pretty things with disastrous pasts. And I love this as a guidepost. And you have these beautiful Montana mined sapphires and American inlay stones, and these relationships with the people that supply you with these things, and fair trade gold, and have really considered this. And so I just wonder if we might chat about that.
Yeah. It didn't happen overnight, and it was definitely a process, like a supply chain. It is a process. You have to find all the elements to, whatever recipe you're making. Like, there's a lot of different things involved. And I think when I was creating at the beginning, when I was first learning, well, I guess like in my whole life, I've always been using what's close to me. Like, it was wood because my dad is a boat builder, so I had a wood shop. And then I was like getting older and making different jewelry. I started bringing in like animal elements because, again, I grew up in Western Montana, and there was like feathers for tying flies, and for like fly fishing flies. And then it's just, as I evolved, and when I was becoming more and more professional, and it was clear that this was going to be like a company and there's going to be people that work here, who work with me, what we have the power to do, because I'm deciding to be like a business and not just an individual. I think there's different expectations you should put on yourself when you are an individual artist versus a business that employs other people and also involves other people's business success. We all rely on I have different contractors and vendors and manufacturing houses and et cetera. We're all like, we're doing this on a professional level, where I think when you're dabbling and you're just being creative and it's like a side hustle, I don't necessarily think you have to keep such strict standards of your work, because you're more just like focusing on the creativity. I think that's really important. Even if, I don't know, not everything is as perfectly sourced as it could be. I don't think you should stress when you're in your early stages of your creativity, because it would just, I don't know, it would really dull the shine of any idea you had if you had to think about where everything comes from when you're really young and you're still just learning your practice.
Yes.
Like everyone will set those expectations for themselves. But as I became a professional and knew that this was going to be my career, and people were coming to me with big asks, like, I need you to make the ring that represents my love. Like those are very serious. Those are very serious requests. And I was using pretty much just any stone I thought was beautiful. So at the time, that was malachite and lapis. Lapis is a really vivid blue. It's a really ancient stone, really powerful stone. Malachite is this like really beautiful layers of green. And they're really common in inlay jewelry because they are mined in vast amounts and they're really vivid in their color. So people love using them. And I did too. And those were not the only stones I used when I was learning lapidary, but they were important because they're so beautiful. And then I read an article about how lapis is the number 2 source of income for the Taliban, and that people are starting to rally together to try to get it deemed a conflict mineral, just like conflict diamonds. But it's a really slow process because it's not valuable in the way that diamonds are. So Leonardo DiCaprio is not like pumping money into trying to like make sure lapis isn't used in any way, because it just doesn't have the industry around it like diamonds did. Because what happened in the diamond industry with stuff becoming Kimberly certified and sort of how everyone can say the word blood diamonds and like kind of gets that that's a question they should ask. That's not part of the conversation when you're talking about less expensive materials. So reading this article really showed me that I needed to be caring about all. It was a very pivotal point where I was like, all right, okay, conflict diamonds, can't even buy one if I wanted to, according to the Kimberly process, which is like a different conversation about how that's not the best. Anyway, I thought, well, if I'm going to be if I want to be this inlay artist, like maybe I can do something with my business to get this conversation started, because I hadn't seen anyone else doing it. All the other inlay artists who were using materials that were like really technically amazing, a lot of Native American artists, nothing was off limits because you're an artist using a palette. And I was thinking, well, I am an artist using a palette, but I'm a business and I want to be a business and I want to create jobs. So I'm going to hold myself to this different standard because you can do a lot of good with a business. So I stopped using lapis and I stopped using anything that wasn't mined in America in January of 2017 because I just understood people were trusting me with their love, this like representation of their love. And how could part of that have come from such a dark and disastrous place? Wouldn't it be like a weird kind of karmic deficit that I'm handing off to someone who's starting this like new beautiful life together? Like it just seemed like my thoughts kept coming back to like, how could I do that? Like I didn't like recall everything I had ever made that involved lapis or malachite, but I had to change once I knew the origin stories of these. Malachite is from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And if you just pause and you think of what you know about the Congo, you can kind of paint a picture of probably how this, whatever this malachite got to your bracelet or et cetera.
Yeah,
so,
we've talked some about rubber and about cobalt, which are also materials that are coming out of the Congo in just incredibly horrific conditions. So
yeah, it's scary. And you're not going to be able to fix everything or make sure everything you touch is clean. Like those are unattainable goals. But I think just coming out from under whatever the veil of ignorance, like you'll see things that you won't be able to change. And that's fine. Like that's okay. But I think in this moment where I live with the wedding ring, because you can fall in love with someone and you can be with them forever and you don't need a ring. But if you're gonna choose something to represent that love, I think it's like a very luxury item that you can take time with because of how special it is. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You want it. I think with like cobalt and all these things in our phones and our other lives, I think you could say you need it.
Yes.
In our modern world.
Yes.
And I don't think people are going to give up phones just because they learned about parts of where the phones come from, but a ring is definitely a luxury item you do not need.
But
yes, everyone.
Yes. And I think that there's something really special about the way that you're conceiving of this, which is as a business of care. And you said something a while ago. You said that in being a business, you're no longer just an individual. And I think that this is true too of parenthood, of partnership, of when you enter into a marriage or whatever that is.
It's amplified by coming together. You're amplifying your beliefs formally. As a business, it's like I don't know, you have mission statements. Like there's these things you do to tell everyone who you are, what kind of business you are. Same in a relationship, you're going to choose a ring. And part of those things you choose tell people, it tells people who you are in the marriage in a way. Like it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be introspective about what you want to be together when you make a choice about a ring.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of our clients find us, is because they've decided like they're going to start making, this is a big first decision a lot of people make together. It's a big investment. And it can really set you on a nice, down a nice path where you work together. You look at where the ingredients come from, like who is involved in this, what does it mean? You start having these like special conversations with your partner, because there's going to be like 1,000 more together on this journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the one first conversation that sort of like binds you together, prepares you publicly to sort of like, it's kind of the ring is like the public acknowledgement of I'm in a relationship with somebody. So choosing the ring it can be heavy. It doesn't have to be. You could literally just find one at a farmer's market, whatever, or Target.
Yeah.
Like you can do whatever you want to do. And you could write a story about your Target ring, about how you're just really nonchalant and you don't, like it's just, you're easy, you go with the flow. Like you can tell any story you want about the thing you choose. But we're definitely here for people who want to talk about supply chains.
Yeah. It's really interesting as you've been talking. I come back to this idea because you said that, right? Like you're a business and not just an individual. And in a lot of ways, partnership, that decision around marriage in a society where we don't live intergenerationally as much as we might have once done, we have a sort of space that's going towards a much more individualistic view, that this is a step actually back into being connected to another human, and that it spreads out from there, that partnership, maybe that turns into children, or you're an individual that's going into a business that's then involving all these other businesses. But all of these things are stepping back into a space of recognizing that interconnected connection between something outside of yourself, something bigger, and that care flows out from that space, that your choices, your actions sort of reflect and affect others. I don't know. I'm just kind of struck by that in talking to you.
Yeah, with a lot of decisions we make, they don't have like a tangible anything to show for it. Like how you go about your day and what decisions you make about what kind of person you want to be. A lot of it's just like how you care for others. Yeah. But this decision with a ring, to be married, to have a celebration, it's very public, and it's public on purpose in an ancient way. Like people need to know what you have decided to do. And we wear rings and we have weddings because we want to tell people what we've decided. A lot of the other decisions about, bringing your own reusable shopping bag to the grocery store, those are just like less broadcast. They're the little decisions you make about your day. I'm really excited. People want creative, like talismans of their love. Yeah. I love the word sacrament. Yeah. It's a very religious word, but I feel like it just describes what these rings are. It's the outward and tangible representation of an inward and spiritual belief.
Yeah.
Is what a sacrament is. And I think it is so cool that I spend all my days making sacraments. I was making sacraments before I got on this call with you. When I hang up, I have to go make some more sacraments.
Yeah. The outward and tangible representation of an inward and spiritual feeling. I just want to capture that.
It's so cool. I think I'm going to start telling people that I'm a sacrament maker instead of a jeweler. That might be like a nice conversation starter with people.
And I think again, like, how so much of your work for me represents a really special kind of beautiful tension. And I think, again, like, you're talking about something that is so firm and real and lasting, right? These rocks that are old and firm and lasting, being an intangible representation of an inward and spiritual feeling. Like, you are making solid
the tangible.
Yes, you are making solid something that cannot be solidified. Does that just as a representation of that? I am just struck by that.
Yeah, it's really heavy. It's super heavy. And I've been like it's super heavy. It's definitely like it's kind of exhausting as an artist because of how loaded that is. And I'm just a human. I'm just a craftsperson. I just have my two hands and I'm working with these materials, and little things might go wrong, or there's a crack, or there's a spot in the natural stone, or there's all these things that come up, and I have to destroy something beautiful because it's not good enough to be this talisman and the sacrament. And I'm getting kind of exhausted by that. It's like the feeling that is most relevant to my day in life in this moment is this like kind of exhaustion of my craft, where it's really hard to have to destroy something that's like really pretty, except for there's like a hairline fracture. Yeah. But because I have decided that this is my business and I can be trusted with such important talismans, of course it has to be destroyed. Of course it needs to be ground out and I have to try again. But like the artist in me that just thinks, well, it's so pretty and no one was going to see it. That person, like that side of me is getting very tired with the expectations that are put on me as a professional, when like the ring is structurally perfect. It's just like a little hairline crack or like a little tiny, I don't know, like the list of the little tiny things that are off is long, and I won't let a single one of them out the door because of how dedicated I am to being trustworthy enough to take the most special ring they've ever had. But you see what I'm trying to describe? Like if I wasn't a business and if I was just like an artist, I think I would not be destroying these rings. I would just let them be because I'm human and that's what happened. Like,
I actually really, I have a couple of things. Okay. A couple of things. First of all, I actually really love that. And like a piece like that would mean more to me. I enjoy
with a little hairline fracture.
Yes.
Well, we do have a second sale once a year, but those are all the ones that like it's hard. Like I'm not destroying every single thing that's not perfect, but if someone came to me with an order and with an idea and I said, yes, I will do this for you, they are getting the most freaking perfect thing I can possibly make. And it pains me to bring it to light. Even if I have to sometimes I make a ring, Kate, like I'll make 3 rings so that one ring passes my expectations for the client. And that is exhausting, but it's also like my gift to them, like that I can do that for them and it will be that perfect.
What do we do with the fatigue of delivering something of a certain caliber? And I don't know if that's coming from outside forces or inside. I think both, right? Like it's coming from the outside. It's also coming from a space within us, a seeking of something.
Like I can take ownership of that feeling, like that desire. If it wasn't in me, then it wouldn't matter. I would just be letting these things out the door. So it does start inside as
But
well.
I think artistic exhaustion from a variety of sources, but I think particularly from wanting to create something perfect. And I see this in myself in a very different way. Like, what do we do with that as humans, as artists?
I don't know. I've been thinking about it all week too. I'm feeling, I don't want to say burnout, but I am also like, something's got to give here. Like, how do I give some kindness to myself as an art? How do I hold the line when someone tells me something's not good enough, but I have already done like as perfect as I'm humanly possible? Like, how do I not become offended? How do I stay kind in that conversation? Or do I need to, like, is it my duty to educate them, I don't know. Like, I have a lot of conflict about that because I really always want to speak to people kindly, but I have to do a lot of educating about what it's like to be an artist because not everyone is. They're coming to me because they want an artist, because maybe they are not. And so there's like I have been trying to, I like signed a few emails this week, like, thanks for respecting my body. Like, when I had to say no for whatever reason, it felt important to like say thank you to them, because I'm saying no because I'm trying to like protect myself. And I know that they wouldn't want to hurt me. Yeah. Like, I can assume that positive intent on these people I've never met. Like, they don't want me to hurt. They don't want me to suffer. But they might not know that what they're asking me will hurt me. Like, that's not their fault if I don't educate them, like, in why I'm saying no. So I guess I come back to like what you said, like, how do we handle it? I think maybe it's just like more truth telling.
Yeah, I love that. More truth telling, because I think that when you're saying thank you for respecting my body and you're giving people this peek into what it is to be you, there is this, I don't know, when you said that, I thought about, it's your physical body that you've put into this, right? It's the work of your hands, your shoulders, your neck, your eyes, all of your,
or the people who work for me too. There's lots of people who I would need to tell, hey, what you did isn't good enough.
Yeah.
But like, I just assume that everyone brings their A game every day. Like, if we all just show up with our A game, then I never have to tell anyone what they did wasn't good enough, because I just trust that they're always doing their best. And that's like how I operate with the people on my team, so that I don't have to tell anyone, I don't have to ever doubt them, because we've all just agreed to show up and do our best.
And that's part of, I think, the care that you exude as a business, the thoughtfulness and care. And the other piece of this that I thought is, we call it a body of work, which is so interesting, right? Like, we call a portfolio a body of work, as if it is
looking
flesh
at
and blood,
as a systems that have worked together to be one. Yeah, well, that is good. I'll be thinking about that.
Yeah. That phrase. It is a body, and that it is of our bodies, and
our bodies change.
Yes, and it's of earth body. Like, to me, your work is a very tangible aspect of earth body. I mean, I think everything is, in a way, right? Like, I mean, even petroleum-based paints are earth body, but yours feel very close to that representation of.
Well, we get fire. That's what's neat about jewelry, is we have that earth element of fire, which is very addicting. Anyone who's going to be a jeweler listening to this their eyes are going to get all sparkly when we talk about fire, because it's like so ancient, and it's like, it's our glue.
Yeah. Oh.
Like, it's totally like everything is held together with this heat, like the torch. It's like the extension of my hand. Like, I have fire coming out of my fingertips. It is like, it's very powerful.
You have to read this book about fire. I'm going to find the name of it and send it to you afterwards.
The one you were telling me at the beginning?
This was yes.
Oh, that was about cooking.
No, there's another one about fire, about our relationship as humans with fire, though this one that I did with John Valiant about fire weather also talks a lot about fire as something that is alive, that, like us, fire consumes. Like us, fire can be suffocated. It can die from lack of oxygen. oxygen,
our
that it can
fire.
be propagated. He's talking more about fire in terms of forest fires, and sort of destructive.
I like the metaphor.
But it's kind of incredible. And he talks about, maybe I'll find this. This might be kind of fun. He talks about fire as something that's aspirational, right? That, let me see if it's just like quickly in my notes.
Yeah, just to like hear his exact words.
To aspire, to breathe desire into ourselves and our world. And I loved this because he talks about fire as something aspiring, and he talks about how maybe we should be called not Homo sapiens, which means wise, but Homo flagrans. That we are defined by this relationship that we have with fire. That we are burning man. And in a lot of different ways. He's talking a lot about petroleum and all the combustion fires that we light on a daily basis, but it's also about cooking and our food and the feeling of safety at night as we are able to turn a light on. And it is also about this glue of creation that you're touching on, that fire is the glue in your work. And I don't know, it's incredible.
It's a neat moment. It's a neat moment of each day to like spark the torch for sure. I can't remember, what were we talking about before I mentioned fire? I feel like
we were talking about the exhaustion and where we can hold
the body.
Exhaustion. Sharing our bodies.
Sharing our bodies in order to create, and like you as a farmer, like using your body to create food that feeds other people's bodies. I think a lot of what is going on, and I'm sure it's not new. We just forget what's that quote where they're like, nothing's free, someone's always paying.
Yeah, I think about this a lot.
I'm sure it's a way more eloquent quote, but like there's a body behind everything you ask for or receive. Someone paid for it, whether or not it shows up to you at the end for free. I think it's pretty easy to get distant from that because we just don't see things being made or prepared or created. Like there's a lot of distance, and a lot of what we use is just, we call it factories, but what are factories
bodies.
full of other people's bodies? But we kind of just stop at like, oh, it was made in a factory. It's handmade. Like it's handmade.
Yeah.
Like I in jewelry get into these conversations like when chains break, because it's like kind of like the Achilles heel of my business. It's like a chain breaks and people are annoyed, and I get it. But when you look at what a chain is, it's a 0.5 millimeter of woven gold. Like somebody made that. I didn't make it. So it's like, I'm sorry it broke, but I can't tell you that like I had a bad day and I made a bad chain. It's just like an element in my jewelry where my handmade pendant hangs on it. But I think a lot of people forget, like, okay, the chain broke, but like, let's look at the chain under a magnifying glass and just be in awe at how somebody made that.
It's made out of gold. I mean, it's so delicate. Like that is the nature of it.
Yeah, they're delicate woven strands of gold, and we just tend to focus on like how it got broken and how it doesn't serve us anymore.
Oh, Marielle.
But when you think about how it even existed in the first place, I get so like hot and like bothered about chain breaks in my business because I'm like, how did they even make that chain? I can't even repair it. I have to just give them a new chain because the fabrication on the chain is so minuscule that like we don't repair it. We just melt it down and give them a new one. But someone's making chain. I have not watched YouTube videos on how they're made. I kind of want it to live in a mystery in my head forever. Like
two things.
But
there's a documentary called Manufactured Landscapes, and the first 10 minutes of the documentary, it's a beautiful documentary, just pans in this massive factory, in some place we've never been, and it's just on one of those dollies, and it just goes for 10 minutes across this factory that must be a mile wide, and all of the people there that are creating. And while you were talking, I pulled up this quote that I love. She's coming on the podcast, but I think you might like this too. So it's a quote from Katie Bowman, who looks a lot at movement and how we can move our bodies differently. And she has this is from her book, Movement Matters. Our daily life is composed of a lot of seemingly innocuous ways we've outsourced our body's work. One of the reasons I've begun focusing just as much on non-exercisey movements as I do on exercise type movements is that I feel the 10,000 outsourcings a day during the 23/24ths of your time hold the most potential for radical change. Be on the lookout for these things. To avoid the movements necessary to walk around to all the car doors, or just to avoid turning your wrist, or to avoid gathering your tea strainer and dumping the leaves and cleaning the strainer in your dishwasher, you have accepted a handful of garbage, plastic, future landfill, and a battery. To avoid the simplest movements, you have, without realizing it, required other humans somewhere else in the world to labor endlessly, destroy ecosystems, and wage war for your convenience. Sedentarism is very much linked to consumerism, to materialism, colonialism, and the destruction of the planet. If you're not moving, someone else is moving for you, either directly or indirectly by making stuff to make not moving easier on you.
Yeah. Again, it's like that's that scale of like all of a sudden you come out of your own life and your own movements and you realize how big the world is, how many people are involved in just, fill in the blank.
How many little delicate links there are in that chain.
Yes, the chain, the supply chain, great way to think about like the metaphor of the physical chain breaking.
Yeah.
We only focus on the break and it not being useful or helpful to us and forget every single other part that was like the miracle of it even existing in the first place, that like you can get things instantly overnight or whatever, just whatever modern life is.
Which also to me has this element of perfectionism that I think we've very much internalized, right? That for something to be broken is to no longer be of beauty, of use, of all of these different things. And the way that comes out in our body of work and in our relationship to maybe artistry in itself, just kind of hearkening back to the hairline fracture in a stone.
That's very relevant and poignant because I did a repair. It was maybe last month where made a beautiful ring. We do a lot of like inset faceted stones into the inlay stone, and it's a really like stressful process on the inlay stone. So there's often little fractures that will appear, and then like I was saying earlier, the whole thing has to be ground out and have to start over. But I was kind of like, maybe it was the beginning of this fatigue I've been feeling. Yeah, this was about a month ago. The beginning of this fatigue where I was like, okay, this ring is beautiful. Here's this little hairline fracture. I see it. I cannot deny I see it. I can't just like ship it and pretend that I never saw it. Like that would be so nice to be able to allow myself to like be off my game like that. But instead of grinding the whole stone out, I decided to do what is called like a kintsugi repair, which is something kintsugi. I'm sure kintsugi. Okay, I'm like, I have had ceramics and I've done ceramics and I love Japanese philosophy, and so like I've repaired seashells this way. And anyway, I thought, well, why am I going to hide the fact that something was wrong? Like, why don't I highlight it? Why don't I just like love the moment that happened and let it become what it needs to be? And I threw like a really pink rhodochrosite stone from Colorado in as the repair in this like turquoise ring. And it was like, I mean, your eye went right to it. It was huge because I had to grind out this hairline crack, but the tools I have are wide, probably like 50 times wider than the hairline crack. So we're talking like a 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter sort of cavity I had to carve. And I replaced it with like a big pink Band-Aid, and I just thought like, okay, because this wasn't for a client. Yeah. So I had kind of the freedom to like
to play.
Fight back, I guess. Yeah, play, but also kind of I felt like I was having this like resistance of like, I know what I'm supposed to do, which is just grind out and start over and make the ring like I had originally kind of, it was like our style, like the Young in the Mountains style. And I was just feeling stubborn that day and gave it this kintsugi repair, and it felt really good. I think I was doing something about my fatigue of this perfectionism, and I'm sure there could be a whole body of work about this. Yes. But that might feel a little more forced than the fact that it just happened. Like I couldn't have planned this because I'm not a planner. Yeah. And that's the inspiration must find you working.
Yeah.
that quote that my dad said, where
Mm.
like hands were dirty, mask was on, problem arose, and I didn't feel like solving it the same old way. And that's
Yeah.
creativity.
Yeah. I think that there's something beautiful too about something that I've been having a lot of conversations about is about mending. That that mending is sort of an antidote to
Yeah.
perfectionism, to mend something, and it's an antidote to think the
It's also antiquated. People
people
don't
don't
mend.
mend. We don't mend. We don't mend
People don't
clothes. We
mend.
don't mend jewelry chains. We don't mend. We
Yeah.
don't mend. We don't mend these fractures in our lives because they feel disposable. And I think that actually
Yep.
extends to the way that we treat people, the way that we treat ourselves.
Mhm.
We don't mend. And so I think that there's something really, really beautiful in that. And I also want to say, again, that inspiration must find you working, because I think that this is such a beautiful it's just really beautiful, I think, in a time when
We try not to work, like you were describing. We try to pass the work along to others farther down the supply
yeah,
chain. So we're not as busy. Someone is
yeah,
working on our behalf. Someone is fixing things on our behalf or making things for us to break and then we disregard. And it's a whole, yeah, it's a whole chain of events that we're involved
yeah,
in.
and I think also that we're just looking so much outside of ourselves, right? That inspiration comes from within, and it comes from these little idiosyncratic moments that you could never plan for, that you could never
Mhm.
anticipate, that
But you've been collecting what you
yeah.
need to mend
Mhm.
the whole time. Like when I was talking about all my
Yeah.
little rocks collection. Like they're there when I need
Mhm.
them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this actually sort of extrapolates out to the way that we treat our inner selves, right? That we're constantly collecting these little gems, these nuggets of what it is to be human, and that we can reach for them and mend these fractures and cracks in what is us. I don't know. There's something a little internal about all of this to me too.
Yeah, and if the aim of your kind of like your practice or whatever your like mental health care is just it's a nice idea to think about collecting bits that will mend you
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
like taking notice of, whatever it is on your morning walks
Mhm.
or new flowers, like you'll need those later.
Mhm.
So like stop and get them now, like add them to your toolkit, your mending box or
Yeah.
whatever.
I love this.
That's a good metaphor.
Do you think this speaks to contentment? I know that we had talked some about contentment
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah, finding contentment when you're
yeah.
creative. Oh, yeah, because I guess it takes you in the moment. Like when you're collecting the rocks or when you're whatever, smelling the flowers, preparing for a future when you're going to need those moments. You're pausing
Mhm.
to you're pausing to find the beauty in that moment, in that stone, in that opportunity, in that flower, whatever. Like that. There's those like pauses of contentment, but I think it's all like where I get confused and what I can't ever put words to is like this like one day I will be content or like this is for this future when I'm going to need it when it will be
Mm.
okay. That's where I get confused about like sort of the creativity and
Yeah.
contentment. Like you're always preparing to fix something, but like so when it breaks is you're not content. I don't know. The words are not here for me on this topic. They never have been.
It's interesting because I thought a lot about this after we talked about it. And as we've been talking about exhaustion and that sort of fatigue that arises, that I think contentment is wrapped up in that too, right? The seeking of contentment and this tension. And you said something, is it possible to be creative and be content at the same time? That in your creativity, you see a constant sense of possibility,
Mhm.
and in that there it sort of breeds a feeling of discontent. And correct me if I'm wrong, I've kind of just taken some notes on what we had discussed. And I think that exhaustion plays in there too, the way that we have poured our bodies into something. And I don't know, and this sort of overlying structure of modernity that demands this perfection, that doesn't want a hairline fracture, and that somewhere swirling in all of that soup is the tension of possibility and contentment.
Yeah, why can't we just be content with that hairline fracture that happened? Yeah. I don't know. I think because we're like always pushing to see what we can do, like how perfect we can be. I mean, it definitely can be a sickness, and like I really have to calm myself down a lot of times when I am continuing to tweak things that really, like, I'm going to say right now, like, oh, they don't matter, but like they matter to me in the moment. Like I get bouquets at the grocery store, and they're never right. And I always chop them down and change them. And like, it has to be mine. I think there's like, I don't know if it's a human thing or if it's an artist thing, but it's kind of not done till I touch it last. I would wonder if like scientists feel that way, or people who are like a farmer. Like, do you ever feel that way? Like, it's not right until you touch it last. Is that a human thing? Is that an artist? Maybe just a Marielle thing?
I mean, I think that there are layers to it, right? I think in farming, I think about this as co-creation. Like, I am not the orchestrator of what I do in farming. I am just a part of stewarding and witnessing an ecosystem and how these domestic animals that may not have once been a part of that ecosystem but can be now play in that. And so I think I don't feel a sense of authorship of that.
Yeah, maybe that's the artist is like, you're signing your name on whatever you touch, so it better be your best. Or that is how
but
I
feel it
like
in the podcast.
Yeah, in the podcast, because you are authoring this. And it has your name on it.
And I caught myself, it's funny, I caught myself, this interview that I've kind of come back to, I guess it's forefront in my mind because that I did with John Valiant. And I read all 4 of his books, and I was like prepping. I had all of these notes and all of this stuff. And it was the day before the interview, and I hadn't read all of the books twice. And I started really picking at myself that maybe I was missing something. And I had this zoomed out moment where I could see just how much I was picking on me for something that I felt, and this is for me. This is not what it is for you, but for me, that there was a sense of my own trying to feel like I was enough through the work that I was putting into the world, and this chip on my shoulder that nothing I could do would ever make me, myself, enough, would never make me whole and unfractured. Yeah, and it was a really powerful moment.
Is there like a phrase that do you think that is there a phrase that you use to like remind yourself to like chill out?
No, there should be though. Do you have one?
I've got one, and you can put this in your back pocket for later, because it's helped me for years and years and years. Because I think I've known this about myself for a long time. Because like, as you were kind of quoting me earlier, saying like I see possibility everywhere. For instance, like a tree got hit by a lightning on my road, and I was like, I should learn to wood carve, and I could make stuff out of that tree. And I was just having this like whole tangent of my life where I become a wood carver just because I saw this like tree broke in half that was beautiful on the inside. Like, so in that moment, I say to myself, or like in your moment where you're like, oh, I'm so bad I didn't read all the books twice, I say, just because I can doesn't mean I should. And that stops me, and it's my version of chill the F out. Like, passing the tree, whatever, looking at your stack of 4 books again and thinking, I should have done that. I should have read all 4 of them a second time. It's like, sure you could, but it doesn't mean you should.
Thinking that, I have a question for you about how you balance a sense of possibility and creativity when you're looking at how the world can be seen through the lens of your hands, through your touch, through what you midwife into this space. I think one of the things that I struggle with as a human, I don't know if it's as an artist, is a constant desire to do all of these different things instead of to just hone that 1, 2, 3 specific crafts, because I feel a sense of
Maybe.
possibility, and I think you feel that too.
Well, you're a very curious person. Like, I've known that about you for a really long time, and it's like really evident in your podcast too. Like, the diversity of topics you cover, it's you're curious. Like, maybe not everyone is the same level of curious. Like, you're a 2 out of 10 at curiosity. You're a 10 out of 10 at curiosity. Like, we fall on a spectrum of curiosity. And like, I think I'm very curious, but I also have a lot of fear of failure. So like, and I also have kids and I don't have a lot of time. So like, there's that constraint that's very helpful. Because if I had lifetimes to live, I have lists of things I'd like to be expert at and do. But like, we have the one line, the Mary Oliver quote, right? Like, what are you going to do with this
precious life?
This one life, one precious life. Like, what with the time you have, what are you going to do? And that's like a question in every moment when you find yourself with some time. Like, it's all about the decisions you make. I've started looking at my life and my creativity. Like, I've always thought I wanted more kids. I have 2 kids right now. They're both under 4, and I thought I wanted more. But lately I've come around to think my creativity, I want to nurture it like it's my 3rd kid.
Yeah.
And with the time I have, where do I want to use it? And I think I've kind of come around lately to thinking like, oh yeah, I want to have time to take my watercolors to the creek, not when I'm retired.
Yes.
Like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, that's very important. That's a value of mine. I want to continue to explore my creativity and my curiosity. So I'm going to make sacrifices to give myself that time. There's not tons of it, but like, I talk to myself about like when I want to, I don't know, I want to do some sewing, but I also like really could chill on the couch. I have decided I want to be the kind of person who will sacrifice the chill on the couch to go to the garage at night, because the itchiness I'll feel the next day because I didn't get my idea into the world, that hurts me more than being a little bit tired because I didn't get to zone out because I had a long day. Like, my creativity is like loud and demanding, and it speaks up more than sometimes like the tiredness in my body or like my like mental fatigue. It's more like that to-do list of the ideas, the creativity and the ideas of my mind producing. Like, it has to be attended to. And I know that about myself at this point of my life.
I love that you actually answered a question that was percolating for me, which is...
Which one?
You put such a... you put a lot of precedence, you put a lot of importance and nurturing into your creativity and your parenting, both, right? But you put your creativity, maybe not first above your family, but your ability to put your creativity first is something I really admire about you. Your ability to choose your creativity over the things that distract us in the modern world, right? To bring this back to distraction, that couch can be a distraction from just an act of creation that I think is very human.
Yeah, I think I know that I'm my best self when I am letting ideas out.
Yeah.
Because when they're kept in, and I do the just because you can doesn't mean you should, and I do that too much, I get like fidgety and I get trapped feeling, and it starts to like affect how I act in other important areas of my life that are not about creativity.
Idle hands.
Because I'm looking for
this.
Yeah, I'm looking for some freedom or something, because I don't know this. I don't know why, but I just know at this point in my life, like my best self when I am like soothed in this way, where the ideas I can find time to let them out, or I can explore them, and I get that time with my creativity. It makes me better at everything I do that's, about my professional creative side or my being a mother or being a partner.
Yeah. I just think it's really beautiful, and I really admire that you do that. And it does to me kind of come back to hands too. And I've heard you talk about idle hands.
Oh yeah. I mean, if this was a video podcast, I'm literally just like
all the time.
I wish I need to be a knitter, but then I would have to sell everything I knit, like like then I would have a knitting company. So like there's certain things I just can't do because I know that I'll commercialize it.
I secretly have things that I'm always
What do you,
messing with.
is that a koosh
Yeah,
ball?
because I
Or
have to
what
do
is
something
that?
with my hands when I'm doing the podcast.
Yes.
So I have like a
Yeah.
clippy and I'll do clippy
Oh, I
things, and I
love
have
it.
a koosh ball, and I'm always kind of down here, like
Why do we
swirling.
think better when why do we think better when our hands are like busy like
Because I
that?
think we thought with our hands first. And this is going to sound a little bit funny, but I
Okay,
think that
let me hear it.
one of the things I love to observe is when the goats go out and they chew their cud and they just sort of become one with everything else. They're not
Mhm.
present in the same way, right? They've just sort of dissolved into their environment, into unity with their environment. And I actually think that's our natural state. I think to come
Like the flow state of the
yeah,
goat.
I think to come into this sort of conscious prefrontal lobe space of decision making and ruminating in a very different way, to just play with the goat thing, but to ruminate on our
Oh
thoughts and
yeah.
opinions. I actually think that came after we were working with our hands, that we were gathering with our hands, or making fires with our hands, or cutting meat with our hands, or picking up a little bit of charcoal from the fire and putting it to rock on a wall and seeing what came out, that we were flaking a little bit of rock to make a knife before we were really constantly present in this thinking action. And so I think in that, we think with our hands first. And I think we've forgotten, my friend May Lindstrom said on a previous episode, like, we are just bodies bodying, and like, we are just hands making. And I think that that is first and foremost, it is before we are humans thinking. And it's not that we're, the other thing she said was, it's not that we're out of our minds, it's that we need to get into our bodies. And I think it's that same thing. We
Yeah.
need to be in our hands. Like, this is to make, is to be human. And I did another episode that talked about manufacturing, and she talked about some of the neuroscience studies on actually utilizing our hands and what it does for our neurochemistry. And so I think we're hands first.
Yeah, I totally feel it. I'm kind of in an evolution in the business right now where I'm back at the bench after like a 3-4 year break while I've had kids, because that's a really physically demanding thing to do. So I'm back on the bench and I'm off the computer screen, and I have not been happier. Like it's something about being off screens in a real world with the torch in my hand, the files, and all that comes along with that, like the back strain or whatever, or like cutting your fingers. It just feels I'm more in my body. I'm completely aware of my body. I have spent a lot of time getting like the seat right and the tools right, and everything's sort of in alignment. And I see it in my I come in the door when I get home, just like, even though it was a hard physical day, I am just like whistling.
Yeah.
Like it was like an alignment I see in my physical body in this new work that's needed of me versus the like kind of business founding computer work where I had spent the last couple of years. I'm kind of like returned back to like my old self, like at the bench, listening to books, learning. Like I am away in another world in a book with my headphones, but my body is here making things, and I'm completely separated. Like there wouldn't even really be thoughts about me doing the work. It's
cud chewing. You're one with it.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm problem solving. I am like solving like strategic, like 0.5 millimeter here. Like I'm doing all that, but it is not with words.
Yeah.
Like if there was science to be like, what is she thinking right now? Oh, I'm in India.
Yeah.
Like 100 years ago in my book. But my mind is like, oh, 0.5 millimeter off there. That blue's too dark. But those are actually not thoughts that are occurring in my mind. It's like they're in my body. It's really feels amazing. I feel like I'm going to live longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making this transition back to like this physical work.
Yes.
Than I would have if I was on the computer like I had been the last couple of years. and the business needs things at different times. So
we
I'm sure
both
that
know
they'll be
that.
like you're, and maybe they feel so good because we take turns with them. Computer to me is very clean. I love the cleanliness of computer work and the way you can close it and you don't have to go take a shower.
Yeah, because
right?
you do dirty work.
Like,
I know. I know. I'm just always
like
covered in poop and goat birth. We
Yeah.
were talking about how my
that is really funny. But like when you're doing like the podcast, you get to like clean up and you get to look nice,
it's
and you
really.
just get to close.
I actually have like
computer at
podcast
the end.
clothes where I get to feel a little bit more something
Podcast
else.
closes. That's really funny and ironic.
I was going to read you this little quote actually because I think it matters and it's relevant. It wasn't part of my plan, but I love this. This is about sort of how making affects our brains. And this is from Rachel Slade's Making It in America. In that way, bringing back manufacturing could even boost happiness. Some researchers posit that the rise in stress and depression among Americans is related to their lack of engagement with the physical environment. Since 1980, desk jobs have increased 94%. Neuroscientist Kelly Lambert argues that kind of work is unnatural, as well as physically and mentally unhealthy. Her research has shown that our brains are wired with an effort-driven reward circuit, which gives us a sense of deep satisfaction when we make things with our hands. She stresses that triggering this reward circuit requires doing activities that produce a result you can see, feel, and touch. Handwork, she writes, and the thoughts, plans, and ultimate results of handwork change the physiology and chemical makeup of the brain, energizing cognition. That's why some of us enjoy taking a break from our computer-driven world to knit, vacuum, do the dishes, or rake leaves. Those kinds of physical, repetitive, completable activities tickle an essential part of the human brain, the one that we needed to survive all those millennia in the natural environment. In other words, nourishing the maker frees the thinker.
Yes. Okay, I'm reading that book. Because I could say, like, it results visible in hours.
Yes.
Like, it's so true. You don't need to like get a new job or whatever. You just need to find an hour or two, or for me at least, I feel it instantly. It feels really good.
Yeah.
And I like what she said, tickles the brain. We have like physical to-do lists that we cross off with highlighters depending on what stage the piece is in. And then the last stage is a really fat chisel tip Sharpie. Ooh. Yeah. That tickles,
I can feel
that tickles my brain.
We do that at the butcher shop.
Sometimes. Yes, it feels so good. And we'll take turns. Like if someone really needs to be the one to close that project out, like we'll hand the marker to the person who really should get to black it out, or who really won that project. Yeah. Like the chisel tip marker across a page, the physical representation of a spiritual and whatever belief, like the sacrament we were talking about, like that kind of crossing off of a physical to-do list feels like a sacrament.
Yes.
Like I did it and I see that I did it.
I'm struck. Do you mind if I look something up really quick, just while we're on here? I've been thinking a lot about sacrament, and it was coming back to you. It's so interesting that we've talked so much about body and like the physical feeling of crossing something off the list being a sacrament, of this piece of jewelry that represents our love being a sacrament. And I was thinking about this sort of religious aspect of taking, what they call it in Catholicism. I'm bad at this.
Like the body.
The body of Christ. I mean, that it's this literal body, like taking in of the body. And there's a weird theme that has emerged in all of this is our body of work. And I was wondering what looking at the etymology, that outward and visible sign of inward and spiritual grace. I mean, it's exactly like you said.
Oh, grace. Grace, not a belief. That makes sense. I heard that word when I was a kid. I didn't grow up religious, but, dabbled with as the way like you do when you have religious friends. But I've known that word since I was 10, before I knew I was a professional artist. I just always thought, whoa, that's pretty heavy. Like that's cool that you can, whatever. It is turn a cracker into a body, or it's magical realism.
Yeah. There is also this piece that later on sacrament came to mean arcane knowledge, a secret, a mystery, a divine mystery. And I think that's
another way the word
it.
was
Yeah,
interpreted in
that
history.
it evolved from early on into that later in the 14th century.
Interesting.
It's just interesting.
That's neat. I'm gonna have to read that and think on it too. I definitely feel like the mystery is there in creating sacraments for people. I kind of came back to the bench in the last couple months, kind of being like, oh my God, like I'm a witch. I just spend all my days creating these like talismans for people. Like this is such an ancient job.
Yeah.
Like, and I saw myself in this chain of the people who have done this through history, because I have a lot of reference books about historical jewelry, and it's been really neat. And I am also interested in sort of kind of like worldwide cultures and how they use fashion and body decoration, etc. So I have lots of books like that in my life, and I just was thinking about how this job is very ancient.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The job the career I have is an ancient one. And I do feel like there's these bloodline, like I am where I am today because my dad did what he did. And then not everyone in my family got to be professional, but my dad certainly was. And so I just think how far back was this steady hand? Like if I just read the book Covenant of Water. I don't know if you read this book or not. Okay, it's one of the most beautiful books I've read in a long time, but they talk about this, they kind of trace something in this family through time. And the story is told over the course of 100 years. And there's these different people who have been afflicted with this thing, not to give anything away. And I'm thinking if I had a family tree and you put a dot on every person who had the steady hand, could you really trace something like that so far back? Would there be surgeons? Yeah. Would there be who would there have been with this trait that is what has allowed my success today? And which one of my kids is going to have it? Because I have 2 kids and I'm looking at them as they're getting older, and I'm looking at, it'll be interesting to see if they have the steady hand.
I love that.
Not really like a supply chain in the first thought of supply chain, but if you think about a trait coming down through history like that, how it's related,
or a
where
skill,
it moves,
even
what it
a
does,
trait, a skill, and the linkages of passing that skill down where it gets lost.
Well, the skill seems learned. The trait would allow for the skill.
Yeah.
Like the steady hand, you could be an artist or a surgeon. But the skill you would learn to apply the trait.
Yeah.
And where would you get? Because I always thought if I wasn't creative in my visual mind, I probably would be a really good surgeon or dentist. Without that visual aesthetic part of who I am, maybe I'd be a really good dentist.
And I think it's the meeting of our body's gifts with something else, right? With the gifts of our mind, right? That steady, that steady hand and that creativity coming together to make Young in the Mountains, that we are given these gifts of different physicalities at times, or of steady hands.
And also the nurture, because I certainly was nurtured by my creative parents. That nature and the nurture combined is part of my success.
I love that. I don't want to take up your whole day, and so I don't know exactly.
I have to go make more I have to make more talismans,
more sacraments. But one of the things I thought maybe we might come around to is the idea of celebration. And I think the first thing that I wanted to do was to celebrate you. I really admire your work. I really admire the way you nurture your creativity. Does it celebrate? Yes.
It says, let's celebrate on the wall behind me.
I love that. Because I think that you One of the things that I don't think I saw before this interview, and I'm so excited to see, is you as a business owner and the way that you consider business and all the lives your business touches, from your clients to your miners to your employees, and to approaching that with a sense of care, of celebrating your own sense of artistry and what it is to work with your hands, even when that is, it can be heavy and exhausting, like even when that has taken a toll. And so the first thing I wanted to do was just to celebrate you, because I think that you're incredible, and I think that you have taken the earth and time and love and sacrament and made it tangible, that you have made the intangible tangible in your work. And it's just,
That is so kind. You're going to make me cry.
you're just really special. And so I want to celebrate you. And I also want to touch on something really beautiful about your business, which is about celebrating every aspect of it, the people that come into it, and your employees and your miners.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. One thing my dad always told me is that, well, I've heard this actually from a few different people, but like when you're the boss, like you get the ability to, you're your own boss. So you can be your own good boss or your own bad boss.
That's, yeah.
Like there's really no one above me making decisions that affect me in my instant daily life, you know? So like I do have the power to make it what I want it to be.
I love that. Yeah.
That was pointed out pretty early, I think, by my dad. You know, sometimes in a way where you'd be like, you know, you're free to work 24/7. When you're your own boss, you're free to work 24/7. It's not a 9 to 5. It's a 24/7. But if you're doing what you like, it doesn't feel like work. But yeah, there's a lot of power in being the one to make the decisions.
Yeah.
And like I'm able to make decisions that make me happy. And I think of other people's happiness when I decide.
You care for your community, and that I'm struck by that. I don't think I've ever considered that I could be my own good boss or my own bad boss. And as you said that, I was like,
there's no one to blame.
I'm not being a very good boss to myself. And so that's an interesting thing to kind of ruminate on.
Wherever you are, you go. Wherever you go,
yeah,
you are.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Wherever you go, there you are. Like there isn't anyone else like when you're an entrepreneur, there's really not anyone else to
buck stops with you. Buck stops with you. Same with farming.
You. So in that way, yeah, in the farming, it's like really neat to have all the power. It's like a really unique position. So I feel like it would be a shame to be a bad boss to myself.
Well, you use that power with so much care and kindness, and I think that what you are making solid is that care and kindness and that intention.
Oh, that is so sweet.
And I'm always, in this process of getting to know you a little bit better, I've just been struck at how much intention everything you do has behind it. And that comes through in the absolute stunning beauty of everything that you make. And so there's just so much that you have made solid for me. I just really appreciate it. And I wonder what we might have missed about creative process, about celebration, about any piece before we wrap up. If there's anything else that's in your heart that I didn't touch on.
Ooh, I don't know. Like that it's all never really going to be answered. Like there is no wrapping it up. It's kind of like the artist's path. Like that goes back to like the contentment or like the creativity and contentment. Like you're kind of always looking and always wondering, and there's not ever supposed to be an answer or a nice way to wrap it up with a bow.
I love that.
Like because the creativity is always looking for things to go wrong or be confusing. That's when beautiful creative things happen.
And I think it's generative
over and over again.
It's generative. It doesn't have an end point in the best possible way.
Yeah, you're just supposed to stay intrigued.
Yeah, and curious and into the mystery.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Anything else? Any pieces? Or should we kind of wrap it up?
I don't know. I feel like I just got like such a big hug from you. I feel like so warm and glowing on the inside, like to be seen, to be seen and listened to. That's like a real gift you give.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I want is for you to feel that way. And I'm just so excited to share this with everybody. We'll have links to the website and your beautiful work in the show notes and to your social media.
Can you link to Target when I tell everyone they should buy a ring at Target?
Just buy a ring at Target.
And if that's the kind of person you are, there's always Target.
We will have links to all of the things and then some, and a reminder that there's more than just rings too, that there is everything. I'm wearing my Young in the Mountains bracelet.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know. And also, like, we celebrate all the moments of life too. That's why it didn't necessarily need to be, it's not always romantic love. Like we do a lot of like, I don't know, like helping people process grief too and loss. And I just wanted to make sure that I want to make it known to anyone who's listening and to people who like come and interact with my business that I'm kind of like rededicated to being there for like all of the celebrations. And some of them are like lots of tears and like death and loss and I don't know, not getting what you want. But I feel like you can look for celebrations everywhere. That's kind of like why I'm just living underneath this like neon sign that says "Let's celebrate," because I also think it's like a really it asks you to be introspective, which helps you be more in the moment, to look for the wins. And then because I'm a business, like celebrate with some jewelry, but like it doesn't have to be as monumental as we might already think, but combining a small win in a tangible way. I just think you're going to start looking for wins and seeing all this like good stuff that happens to you everywhere. You don't need to be buying jewelry for every single thing, but I think it's like putting on new eyes and looking at your life in a way to see what there is to celebrate.
And I think it can be powerful to have a demarcation of something, whether that's a loss or a win or grief or
it was real, it happened. Let's make it physical, even though it happened in your mind or in your
I think
heart.
about the word, this is so funny, I'm gonna throw it to you, touchstone. And this is a very literal embodiment like that sometimes within our life we need a touchstone, right? It's that thing that we come back to, or a touchstone that demarcates something that happened to us. But in this case, it's literally a stone to touch. It's a touchstone.
Yeah, touchstone. I'm gonna ruminate on that too. I like that. I've not really thought.
I can look up the proper definition, but I think about touchstones a lot in my work for some reason.
It feels like not a real thing, a touchstone in my mind, like the way I would use it in like a phrase.
A fundamental or
it's not actually real.
Yeah, a fundamental or quintessential part or feature, the basis of something. And so I think when I think about touchstones, I think about values, and I also think about those things in my life that have become touchstones, which is sometimes a loss and sometimes a win that I return to anchor myself in who I am. And so there's a demarcation of that in celebration of a literal touching of stone.
Well, you just touched your heart. You just touched your heart when you were talking. And that's where necklace pendants hang, like I'm not wearing it today, but I always wear one. I have a pendant with my son's hair in it, and I play with it all the time. And in a way, I'm like, I don't know. I just watched where you put your hand when you were speaking, and I was like, oh, that's exactly where, like, when you have a long 18-inch chain, the pendant hangs over your heart.
It's touchstone. And I mean, your son is a touchstone, right? It's those things that become a part of our life, a part of the sort of fabric of who we are. So I don't know, and I think celebrating.
And I get to make them real.
You get to make them real and tangible.
Yeah, it is so neat.
Which is really beautiful. So Mariele, thank you so much for being here with me, and I don't know, just for being there over the years. I think you're great.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy we got to reconnect in this way. I don't think we ever spoke this deeply when we knew each other in person. This feels like but it's safe. It's like safer to be apart. And then to connect in this like verbal way than any time we'd ever probably been in the same room together. We didn't know what we were missing. Now I have a little bit of regret.
Podcasts have a really interesting power sometimes, and also I think sometimes we find each other at different places in life that are more salient than others. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is like about an intention. We're going to speak for an hour on this topic, and let's show up and do that together. It's a nice way to like frame what's about to happen.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mind, Body, and Soil podcast. If what you found resonated with you, may I ask that you share it with your friends or leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts? This act of reciprocity helps others find Mind, Body, and Soil. If you're looking for more, you can find us at groundworkcollective.com and at Kate_Kavanaugh, that's KATE_KAVANAUGH on Instagram. I would like to give a very special thank you to China and Seth Kent of the band All Right for the clips from their beautiful song Over the Edge from their album The Crucible. You can find them at All Right on Instagram and wherever you listen to music.